Voices serves as the megaphone for individuals who have endured transformational change. By highlighting trials and triumphs, our desire is to create a safe space for pivotal conversations, which in turn will deepen the story and provoke hope for you, our listeners. As you may know, change is never easy, but it is inevitable. You are not alone in what you're facing. Your transformation is possible, purposeful, and now. And here's Aaron Wiggum, founder and managing director of New You, with this week's guest.
Welcome to another edition of New Voices. My name is Aaron Wiggum. I am your host for today, as well as the managing director of New You. New You serves as a way for diverse talent to imagine, discover, and actualize a 2.0 version of yourself. We're going to have a wonderful conversation here today with a young man who is doing some amazing things in the city of Tulsa. And he's going to share his journey with us. I know this guy to be a man of faith. I know him to be a man of few words. I know him to be very insightful. He's very insightful. He's always thinking, very pensive gentleman. And what I appreciate most about him, and I'll give him his flowers in his intro here, is that he really wants what's good for the greater good. He's never thinking about the individual. He's always thinking about the collective win. And I really appreciate that about him and the work that he's leading and the efforts that he is actually doing. I want you to welcome to our show today none other than Tim Mwesigwa.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be here and on New You Voices talking to you. You know this already. You're someone that I highly respect, and I think this is a great opportunity. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And so we typically start, we're going to just have a conversation. So I want you to lose all pretense. I said it to you off camera. I'm going to say it to you on camera.
Yeah.
Like, feel free to move your hands, do what you got to do. You're in a safe space right now, right?
Okay.
This is me and you dialoguing.
All tensions go right now.
Yes, there you go, my guy. All right. So I want you to walk us through, what is the Tim Mwesigwa story?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tim Mwesigwa story, and that's pronounced as Mwesigwa. You're doing a great job.
I'm trying my best. I'm going to get every syllable in there.
Yeah. Tim Mwesigwa, my last name sort of tells you that I'm not from here.
Yes.
I was born and raised in Uganda. Grew up in Uganda. Spent about 18 years of my life in Uganda. I grew up in a small town out of Kampala. Kampala is the capital city of Uganda,
right.
which is, Uganda is, for those that do not know, it's in the eastern part of Africa. It's a landlocked country surrounded by Kenya and Tanzania. Most people know Kenya and Tanzania.
Yes.
And most people probably don't know Uganda, but it's a small country of about 45 million people, and Kampala itself has about 3.5 of those 45 million people. Okay. So I grew up in a small town called Natete, which is out of Kampala. Grew up in a faith-based family. My parents are both preachers. My dad was always on the road. And so grew up in a very small town with a very large community, though, which has been one of the biggest things for me trying to find myself in Tulsa community, because I grew up in a place where I knew everyone within, a 10-mile radius, because we were that much connected to everyone around us.
Right.
And so grew up, Christian home, went to schools within that small town. My mom was an English teacher in Uganda. She stopped teaching, or she gave up on her career for some time there when she gave birth to my third brother. So I have 3 siblings. And so she gave up on her career for some time to take care of us, which I think was such a great thing, because she really wanted to invest in us.
Right.
I think one of the questions that I've always asked myself growing up, in Uganda, and I think it's really what our parents wanted us to ask ourselves always, how can someone grow up in such a small place and do great things? And so that's really part of my story, and how I ended up here is always thinking big, and that's what our parents really wanted us to think beyond Uganda and our small country and small city and small city mentality, break that and think beyond just where we were born and raised, doing great things.
Yeah. Okay. And so after you're growing up as a youth through coming out of Uganda, well, let's stay there for a second. Let's stay in that place. So I first was, Uganda was first brought to my attention by the Idi Amin story.
Right.
And through all the unrest that kind of happened through his tyranny.
Right.
And can you talk a little bit, I know you're probably young during that time and whatnot, but can you talk a little bit about the aftermath of his regime?
Yeah.
And how has Uganda recovered, or has it recovered from some of the unrest that has taken place?
Right. Aaron, to answer that question, I was not born.
Yeah, okay, that's what I figured. Okay.
So I was born in 97 and all of this happened.
I didn't know you were that young. Okay.
Before. Okay. But I mean, my mom both my parents were well and alive by then. Yeah. And they tell us stories of how horrible it was to live under such a regime where, you had to be in your house by 4 p.m.
Right.
Otherwise, if you were found on the street, you just didn't know if you'd make it through the night.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, Uganda has its history from Idi Amin to northern Uganda, where Kony has been terrorizing people for so many years. But I mean, I feel like we have recovered from that. There's still wounds from the past. There's people that today, people that are 80 years old, still tell you that was a horrible time to live.
Yes.
And they make us grateful and tell us all the time in Uganda, when growing up in Uganda, they'll tell you that you need to be grateful for the freedom you have right now.
That's right.
The fact that you can be out at 7 p.m. is a blessing, because there's a time where Uganda was under such dictatorship.
Yes.
And people didn't have the freedom. Girls didn't go to school. My mom only went to school because my grandmother really, really wanted her to go to school. And but my grandmother got married at 15 years. And so that was a story for so many people.
Right.
And that has changed. Well, it's not where we want it to be, but it has really changed from the Idi Amin time, the Obote time, several other leaders that came after Idi Amin, and we now have a president that has been president for 37 years, which is not ideal. Yeah, but we are grateful for the peace. Yeah, people are still living that. Places in Uganda, I didn't grow up in abject poverty, so I don't want to sit here and say I grew up in that. Right. But I know people that grew up in that. Yes. There's still parts of Uganda that are experiencing poverty right now. And so I'm grateful for the progress, but I still think there's so much ahead. Yeah. I mean, considering that 80% of the population of Uganda right now is under the age of 25, which is crazy. Wow. Okay. It's one of the youngest countries in the world. So there's so much hope with a younger generation, but we've also had dictators. Although the president we have right now is, has been there for 37 years, and he understands the concept of peace and living in a place where there's peace, but there's just so much lacking, economic development, opportunities for young people, which ties into my story. Growing up in Uganda, I just look at my peers and the people I grew up with, and they didn't think beyond graduating from high school and maybe staying at home until you get married and maybe working in your father's garden. They didn't think beyond that. And for me, I think our parents just always encouraged us to think beyond our parents in a small town. And that pushed me and my brothers, but I have 2 siblings here, to think, how do we get great education, better education, and really do great things and go beyond the borders of Uganda. Yeah. And so that's how we both 3 of us ended up here. for those that do not know, I work for InTulsa as an operations manager. I did my MBA at ORU. My brother is an electrical engineer right now. And saying all those things to say that, looking back at our colleagues that we grew up with, our peers, they're not anywhere close to where we are. And I don't say this to make them look bad. It's just that, growing up in a place like that where you don't see so many opportunities for people your age group, you're limited in your thinking and how you can break out of that. And so that's why there's that cycle of like poverty and people just like stay within the same, loop of like, the same family and after graduation, there's just nothing to do after that. Because there's not so many opportunities for many people.
No, that's good to share. Let's stay in Uganda for one more moment. When you think about, I have two questions. One, what do you miss about home? Ooh. All right, and then the other question is, walk our listeners through the beauty and the tapestry of Uganda and the rich history.
Oh yeah, so. Uganda, I mean, let me also take it back to, the size of the country. I think that's where all of this is going to blow people's minds. Uganda is, if you're, for American listeners, the state of Texas is like 3 times bigger than the country Uganda. Alaska, the state of Alaska is 6 times the size of Uganda. But, with that much size of a country, there's just so much. We're so blessed with natural resources and beautiful weather. We have tropical climate throughout the year. So it doesn't really get hot. It doesn't get cold. It's beautiful weather throughout the year. We are also blessed with just fertile land. Like people can grow crops and survive on that, which you don't find in certain parts of Africa, especially in the north where it's like desert. So the western part of Uganda is really where most of the tourists go. If there's also a fun fact, several missionaries came to Uganda years ago, and they had gone through several parts of Africa to get to Uganda, and they considered Uganda one of the most beautiful places on earth. Because the source of the Nile, River Nile, is in Uganda.
Wow, I didn't know that.
But that's what most people do not know. It flows from Uganda through Sudan to Egypt. But there's just so much to see and the beauty in just like the resources we have, the rivers, the streams, the lakes, Lake Victoria, which is one of the famous lakes that most people know. But growing up in Uganda, those are the things that we were known for as a country. And that's one of the greatest sources of income to the country itself is tourism. Like there's so many people that come to Uganda for the lakes. We have one of the largest gorilla parks in Uganda. And so it's such a beautiful country with an interesting history. But it's amazing. I encourage anyone that has never been to Uganda or thinking of going to Africa and has not thought of Uganda as one of those places to check it out.
Okay. And what do you miss most about home?
What I miss most about home is, I think, the food.
Okay, of course.
My mom, I'll tell you this funny story. My mom came in last Friday. And she brought us a whole suitcase. We paid for an extra suitcase of food because that's how much. As an immigrant, that's one thing you always miss. I'll speak for myself. That's one thing that I miss about my country. The food. Which is a variety of cuisines. Like we have all kinds. We don't have spicy food. All our food is mostly sweet. But it's organic and it's really different. The flavors are different. And I've lived in India where there was plenty of flavors too. But moving to any country, there's just that one thing that you miss about your country. And for me, it's food. The food that my mom would make. So I'm really blessed to have her here for a month. She'll be making food for us throughout the month.
You have to get your pants adjusted.
I gain 5 pounds every time she's here. So that's exciting that my mom is here. For 3 years, we couldn't get her here, and we finally managed to get her here last year.
Wow, that's good, man. So as we're going through your timeline here, you go to school.
Yes.
You choose to go to ORU.
Yes.
Okay. And what made ORU your choice?
Well, I think there's a story in between Uganda and ORU.
Tell us it.
That's really pivotal and changed my life.
Okay.
So growing up in Uganda again, I said parents encouraged us to dream big. They wanted us to go to universities abroad and get that exposure, get involved immersed in like different cultures and different countries. Well, they could not afford that back then when I was ready to go to college. Well, so I applied to several universities abroad, and all of them came back with saying, we're admitting you, but we're giving you like a partial scholarship. Yeah. And my parents were like, yeah, so I got like admitted into like 3 universities in the UK, but my parents could not afford. Got admitted here, could not afford. My parents are like, so what's the, in between Europe or the US? Could you look at Asia?
Yeah.
And so I started looking at universities in China and India. And long story short, found a university in India, in northern part of India, in a state called Punjab, where I went for my first degree.
Yeah.
So I did my undergrad in accounting. Now, that part of my life is what's amazing, because I was 18 when I left Uganda. Moving to a whole new place, as used to, my mom coming back home, and both my parents are there, and they're taking care of me. Now at 18, I'm moving to a whole new country where they speak so many different languages, and I don't know any one of them except that I could speak English, and my classes were in English. So I had to learn a whole new language, get used to. In northern part of India, I don't think they had much exposure to people that looked like me. And so I got so many people walking up to me wanting to take photos with me. That was a whole different experience.
Yeah.
Like I would get people walk up to me, kids walk up to me and want to touch me.
Yes, yeah.
And my classmates in my class, they would want to take me to their parents, see this, guy from Africa, from Uganda.
Yeah.
And that was a whole new thing for me. Like I was adjusting to the weather. It was really hot.
Yeah.
As adjusting to the spicy food in India,
Yes,
which is amazing.
very spicy, yeah.
I now love Indian food.
Me too.
Asian food in general. But adjusting to all of those different culture shocks. And I got to a point where I was like, this is too much. Like I'm 18. I shouldn't be going through all of this. So I tried to convince my parents to take me back home to Uganda or let me come back home. My dad was like, no. My dad was like, he's a traditional African man. So he's like, you're a man, so you should figure it out.
Yeah, figure it out.
Figure out how to make it.
Yes.
And that was tough. So I talked to my mom behind my dad's back. And of course, my mom, she buys me a ticket back home. And I thought it was going to be a one-way flight to Uganda. Well, she buys a return ticket for with a 2 months return. And she's like, when you get back home, we'll figure it out. We'll talk through this and you go back and finish your degree. Because the other thing that I learned growing up was, we don't quit. Like when you start something,
that's right.
You've got to finish it.
Yes.
And that was a principle in our house. You go to school, you've got to graduate. You have to go through all the phases, regardless of how tough it is. You've got to do it until you finish it.
Yeah.
Complete it. So I flew back home after that one semester in India. And I'm like, Mommy, this is hard. I cannot do it. I tried to convince my dad. He's like, you're going to have to go back. And, my parents talked me into going back. And they were like, the principle in this house, you cannot just come back and say, I quit, because it's tough.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going back to India. And finished 3 years. I finished my degree in 3 years because
you had to get it done. Yeah, get out the way.
I had to get it done, and that next 2.5 years after that one semester where I had to go back and come back to India were some of the most amazing years of my life.
Wow.
because I end up being, president of international students on campus, because now, as helping other international students become, fit into the culture and figure out their life in India, and ended up becoming class valedictorian, did so well in my classes.
Oh, wow.
And that period of time, the first 6 months were hard, but the fact that I went back to India, stuck it out, really, really made me stronger and more confident that moving to Tulsa, Oklahoma, was not such a huge thing for me, because I was really just taking what I learned from my previous experience and and Tulsa and India, Punjab are completely different places.
Of course.
But that experience really taught me to be, resilient.
Yeah.
And so I'm so grateful for that experience that I had. Tough, but really made me who I am today.
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful. And so how did that segue into ORU?
Yes, so the dream was, my parents, again, are preachers.
Right.
They watched Oral Roberts,
okay.
back in the day. And so they really had this vision of their kids would end up at ORU at some point. And so they wanted us to come. So my brother came here before me, actually, because by the time he went, he had to come to college. My parents, at that point, could afford at least to get him into college, but he also got scholarships at ORU that helped him, helped our parents be able to afford American college, which is expensive. And so I applied to ORU to join my brother. Again, my parents really wanted us to be at ORU and have that whole experience of American education and see where that would take us. So got admitted into ORU and came here in 2021 and did my MBA at ORU. While doing my MBA at ORU, my brother was interning for one of the George Kaiser Family Foundation Summer Impact Academy internships. And he told me about a new program that was launching called Atento. So I looked up Atento and applied to one of their MBA. Actually, I think they call it the Attentantship program. But for master's students, I applied, and the operations manager reached out, Josephine at Atento reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to bring you on." And so that's how I end up in this ecosystem that I'm working in right now.
Got it. And shout outs to Josephine, by the way. Yeah,
she's amazing.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
Simply amazing. Okay, so let's talk about the wows of navigating the immigration process in America, and how, what are some challenges that you faced, and what are some things that you've had to endure learning a new culture, a new way of life here, some of the rigors of, being planted in middle America, leaving a country where everybody looks like you to a place where very few people look like you, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes, that's such a great question, Aaron. I think I talked about this already, but moving to India gave me that exposure to different cultures.
Yes.
And that was my first taste of variety of cultures, because we had students from all over the world.
All over, right.
Yeah. So, and then my experience has also been sort of different from lots of other people that immigrate to the US, because I came to ORU, and the ORU has a large international students community. And so that was my support system when I got here. Now, moving to Tulsa, Oklahoma, has its own challenges and differences. So my biggest culture shock, I think, was really how fast people spoke here. And my classes were just the accent. Like, for some time, they couldn't get me. I didn't get them. And everyone would ask me to say it again.
Right.
And I was like, I'm really struggling. I feel like I can speak English, but I'm struggling to have conversations with people.
Right.
I think that was my biggest culture shock. But I think the immigration process, my immigration journey, has also been, it's nothing but a miracle, because most international students get here on an F1 visa.
Right.
And have to, finish out their F1 degree program and then move into CPT or OPT, which is a year of practical training, gives them some work authorization to work here, which was the same case for me. I had to finish out my degree. But during my program, I got into Atento. I worked at Atento for 3 months or so during my internship. And Atento gave me a full-time position. So I didn't have to go through the hassle of trying to find jobs or employers that can sponsor me, because, again, Atento already was way ahead of several other employers in that thinking of, we can hire international students and keep them on. So that helped me. And I went through the process with, thankfully, with InTulsa and Megan Thomas, who really, I'm so grateful, because there's people like that can see potential in someone and say, I will sponsor this international student. I don't know if they'll stay, but I'll sponsor them and give them a chance, an opportunity. And so I got into the H-1B visa program through InTulsa. I got selected. Now, the H-1B visa is a lottery. So there's a pool of visas. So many people apply to this program, and only a handful are selected. Now, I count myself blessed that I was, because I know so many other people that applied to this program that were not selected. So that sort of put me onto this path that not so many international students get, because some of them either get employers that can sponsor them but cannot go through the H-1B because it's a lottery. They never get selected, so they have to go back to school. So my immigration journey has not been as challenging as so many other people, but the immigration system in America is challenging for anyone that goes through it. It takes time.
Yes.
And I've talked to you about this. There's a time where I was nervous. I was I don't know if I'll get selected. And if I didn't get selected back then in 2022, I would have to leave the country or go back to school. So there's not so many options for you. But I'm grateful that I got selected, and I'm on path to maybe permanent residency at some point, which not so many international students get that opportunity. So my story has really been different, but challenging, of course. There are nights where you think, what happens if, April 1 comes and I find out I wasn't selected? Do I just pack my bags and leave? Or do I go back to school? What happens? And that time is just not ideal, but you have to keep the faith, one, but also just keep thinking about the bigger picture of, I know what I want in life, and I know where I want to go, and I won't give up now. And I'm not going to quit in my mind now. And so that got me through that time, my faith and just the belief that, things are going to work out one way or the other. And so that's how I'm actually here today.
Okay. So when you're going through this process, you are, you spent your time in India.
Yes.
You're now in Tulsa. You are going through this whole visa situation.
Right.
And you're working a full-time job.
Yes.
You are also helping your brothers to come to America.
Right. And guardian to my youngest brother.
Okay, guardian to your...
Yeah.
So all of this pressure at age what?
26.
26 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, while learning a new culture.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about the pressure. Okay, we have a saying at New U that pressure gives you energy. Stress takes your energy, right? So, but sometimes if too much pressure, it becomes stress.
Right.
Right? And when it's stress, that's when you break.
Yes.
So let's talk about the pressure of being the first, not to come to America, but the first to plant the seeds and kind of get, everything else.
Yeah.
talk about that. What is the weight what does the weight of that feel like? And how did you internalize it or release it, or are you still working through that? Or like, did you go to therapy? Like, help us to understand how to navigate that how you navigate that thing.
Yeah, I am not perfect, so I am still working.
None of us
through
are.
that. Yeah, I think for me, I've always dealt with pressure in my own way because I'm the firstborn of 4 boys. So like my parents always told me, your brothers are looking up to you.
Yeah.
So I mean, making it in America is not just the pressure of me trying to make it. There's also like my whole family hinging on this breakthrough.
Yes.
And so I've felt the pressure.
Yeah.
It's exhausting sometimes.
Yes.
There are times when you wake up and you're like, this is exhausting. I have a young brother that's just turned 18. We pay his tuition and take care of him. He's in a private school. And then, my parents, we sort of like also help them come here. They stay here with us.
Switch roles now.
Right.
Yeah.
And then work, right? And so there's so many pressures. But where I've always found my, safe place or health is faith. And I've always run to my faith because it's really fundamental to me, what I believe in. And, just serving in church helps me sometimes. After a stressful week, I serve at my church and just trusting in God. And that has always taken me through some of the most exhausting weeks of my life. But I mean, pressure does help you become confident sometimes.
Yeah.
And going through all of this, the whole H-1B process, the pressure of thinking, I've got to go through this process to secure this full-time job from, even going back to when I just started my MBA program, the pressure of I have to graduate through this at the end of this program and get a job. And, get a job that can pay me enough to live in Tulsa. It has always been, encouraging that after all of this, like graduating from ORU, I became stronger and more confident. Going through this immigration process, I can boldly tell other people you can make it because I know I have gone through this process and it has some way refined me and made me a better person and a stronger person, more resilient. But I think, the pressure always strengthens us. But if it's too much pressure and you don't have an out or a way of an escape, a place you escape to, it can break you. And I've been there before, right? Like at ORU, I had to keep a full-time job to pay for school and also figure out how I can work and do my full-time MBA program. And it got really too much for me. I gained so much weight. And so ORU has this program where you can do therapy. And coming from Uganda, therapy's not
a thing.
It's not a thing. So it took some convincing, but also realizing that I needed help. And so I went to therapy for some time there. So it has always really just been figuring out what are ways I could escape and find help. But still, learn through these pressures that come.
How, do you feel as though you've made a way?
For myself and my brothers?
Yes.
That's a tough question.
I know. That's why I was trying to...
but I feel like I am trying to make a way.
Okay.
And... my parents being here is a huge dream for us. Like we're planning a trip to Brownsville, Missouri up here soon. But my parents have never been on vacation. Because we grew up trying to make ends meet. And so seeing myself here, supporting my parents, my brother, I feel like that's the start, the beginning. There's so much more. I by no means feel like I have arrived, but I feel like we're starting to see, we're starting to see back home, we call it the promised land, and experiencing, enjoying the fruits of our labor.
Yeah.
So I feel like, yes, we're starting to see a way.
Okay.
And myself having a job here, my brother having a job in the US working here, my parents are so proud of us because they're like, we saw these boys here and our peers back home do not have jobs.
Right.
There are some of our friends that do not have jobs.
Yeah.
And being able to have jobs that can pay us well enough to support our brothers, bring our parents in here, sometimes visit, is to some level like a measure of success for us.
Yes.
And our parents are so proud of us. And I think, to answer your question, I think we're starting to see the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. At 26.
Yes. Yeah. So I started that off as a question. I'm going to turn it around now.
Right.
And I'm going to double down on you have made a way.
Okay.
And making a way doesn't mean you arrived.
Right.
It means that you've already carved out something to follow.
True.
You've laid down a blueprint. And
Right.
just because you have the blueprint doesn't mean the building is built.
True.
But you do have a way for it to happen.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so you already have made a way. And the way that you have has already been made for you. Right?
Yeah.
And so the pressure is necessary.
Right.
But it also is part of the reward of making the way, because once you get to the other side of where you're going,
Right.
you have the fruit of of knowing that like none of this was here
Right.
before, right?
True.
The same way that your brothers followed you into this world is the same way they followed you out of Uganda into America.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And your parents now are getting the benefits of both worlds based on the fruit of what you're producing.
Right.
In the grocery store, where the vegetables and the fruit is called what? The produce section, right?
Yeah.
It's called produce. Why? Because it produced something.
Right.
The seeds that were planted yielded something. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so the seeds that you've planted at 26 have already yielded brothers that are living here.
Right.
A mother that can vacation here.
Right.
Right?
Right.
At 26.
Yeah.
You're not 56 talking about this.
It's true.
You're 26 talking
Yes.
about it, right?
Yeah.
And so making a way is not meant to be, not to sound conclusive. It's not conclusive. It just means that there is a blueprint.
Right.
There's a blueprint. And not only are you a blueprint for your family, you're a blueprint for, any immigrant that I'm going to have a conversation with
Right.
is going to say something similar to what you just said, right?
Yeah.
Unless they're coming from, England or, somewhere. If they're coming from, Africa or South America or somewhere else,
Right.
they've had to endure some type of tyranny or
Right.
dictatorship.
Right.
They've had to endure some type of,
Luck.
Yeah. And so now they're coming to America with this dream, and you have the blessing of being the dream and the reality.
Right. And I have so many people that look up to me back in Uganda.
Yeah.
My parents use me as an example to so many other young people in
Look
Uganda.
at them.
One of my professors flew back to Uganda last December to visit my parents.
Wow.
Because I haven't gone back home since I came here. So she went with a team of other OAU students to see Uganda and ended up at my parents' place. And my mom has our graduation photos hung up in the living room. And she was telling us that she tells people my professor telling us that she tells people when they come to the house that one of my sons is helping run the city.
Yeah.
Right? And then, because, when she comes to Tulsa, I take her to some of the projects we have down here.
Yeah. Everybody knows you.
And she's like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, you're helping run the city.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. And then she tells them that my brother is an engineer. My brother used to work for PSO. And he runs electricity in Tulsa.
Right.
And she's telling other people that, I'm so proud of my kids because there's a time where we didn't have much.
Yeah.
There's a time where we just wanted to get tuition to get them to school.
Yeah.
I mean, to put this in perspective, like $1 is equals to 3,500 Uganda shillings. That's how tough it is out there in Uganda.
Wow.
And the effects of COVID are just insane.
Yeah.
Like people are struggling.
Yeah.
And so I find myself, like you said, I mean, you know, I've not arrived, but in some sense I have because of where I've come from.
Yeah.
And I've learned to appreciate the journey along the way because everything I've gone through has led me to this point right here.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, you know, I know you're a modest guy and you're modest and you know, and we all should be, right?
Right.
But when a thing is a thing, call it a thing.
Right.
Right. And so I'm going to push you to, you know, to own it, own it. Like you're here now, and no one can take away from you what you've done. You did it.
It's true,
right?
No one can take that away.
You've endured it,
yes.
right? And so all of that becomes very. It becomes DNA for what's next, right? And so if Tim can do this by 26, what could he do by 30? 30. Better yet, what could he have done by 50? Better yet, what will his grandchildren do? Right. Because of the seeds that are planted. Like if this is monumental to what's happened in your life, in your family's lifetime, right? What seeds are planted now that will become? One thing we talk about at New U is how when you buy an apple, you really buy an orchard. Right. So when you see someone, don't see them as the apple, see them as the orchard. What else is in them? There's seeds in them. And those seeds don't bring forth apples. They bring forth apple trees.
That's true.
Right. Yeah. Which is, so that means that one apple has thousands of apples in it. Yes. Right. Yes. And so you're actually getting to see the thousands of things or the ripple effect. I haven't seen it in my lifetime yet. Right, I'll be 42 in September, and I haven't seen the fruit. I haven't seen the fruit of what I've done, what it could yield. Because you know, I haven't opened doors for my family in that way. My dad did that for our family, right? So I've used his life as a floor to be, or as a floor for my life, right? Right. And so I'm creating my own trajectory forward. Now I've set up investment accounts for my nephews, and I've done this and I've done that, and I'm showing them a different way of living. But I haven't really changed the trajectory of our last name yet. You're doing it at 26. I want you to understand the gravity of that. That's why I'm kind of harping on this a little bit. Yes. It's not just about America, because America has problems. Okay. It got deep therapeutic problems. However, when a parent sees all of their labor turn into a harvest, it does something to you.
It does.
Because so many parents never get to see the yield from the investment that they made in their child.
True.
And so the fact that your mother and your father get to see the yield, right, and that you get to live and be the yield is, I mean, we don't have to talk about nothing else. Like that is that really is the secret in this. Like everybody wants that. Right. Everybody wants their kids to do better than them. Right. And then for their children to do better than them, and for there to be this chain effect of success and of longevity and of legacy that happens throughout our bloodline. So kudos to you, man. I really salute you. Can we get a couple of the boo 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 something like that? Do a whistle, a wink, or something. Right. Kudos to you for staying the course.
Thank you for saying that.
Learning these cultures, you know, India to America, you know, languages and everything. Understanding that, you know, my path wasn't perfect, but it was ordered. Right. And you followed it. And where are you taking it to now?
Well, I mean, the future will tell. Okay. But I am in Tulsa right now, 26, living in Tulsa. I think I'm going to live in Tulsa for some time. who knows, maybe indefinitely. But like Tulsa feels like home right now because I grew up in a very small city, and this feels like home. I've been to other cities like Atlanta and like Houston, and I'm like, this is too big for me.
It's a lot.
And so right now, I mean, I'm just doing doing the best that I can with the opportunities that I have right now. Working at InTulsa, and then we'll see where that leads.
Two questions for you. All right. One is, can you take us through? So, New Voices serves as a way for individuals who have, as a megaphone for individuals who have endured transitional or pivotal situations to be able to speak to that. Can you take us through a time where, and it could very well be your whole immigration story, but can you take us through a time where you've had to endure something and you just didn't know how it was going to play out? Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you hold on to hope through that situation?
I think for me, that was my immigration. Most recent one is my immigration journey.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, it's a lot of resisting. There's no assurances at all.
Yeah.
And when you're betting your whole future on the U.S.
somebody else's
immigration
system,
it's just like stressful. And I just didn't know how that was going to happen. I think I talked to you about it. I came to you, we prayed together at some point.
Yes, we did.
I did not know how that was going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, all you can do is just hope that it's going to turn out great.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how I was going to make it. I think one of the things that really helped me and anchored me during that time was, just holding on to the faith that I am here for a purpose, and it's not by accident that I ended up in Tulsa, and it's not just going to end. Right. For some reason, I just had that hope in me that either I'll get the H-1B visa or something else will open up.
Right.
And so that took me through that time. But like, I just remembering, and it's not so far ago, it's like a year ago.
Yeah.
When I was going through this process.
Right.
And just remembering, talking to my brother, I'm like, hey, I mean, 1 month from now, I could be packing my bags going back to Uganda. And like my whole family is looking up to me and they're like, we're hoping you get selected. Like let me maybe explain what really happened. Like my parents were praying. Like, we hope he makes it.
Right.
Everyone that I know, all my friends.
Yeah.
And so I could feel all that pressure of everyone is counting on this breakthrough for this to work out. And it was the first time InTulsa was also doing this. So there was just so much that we didn't know, so much unknowns. But I just held on to that hope of I am here on purpose, for a purpose.
Yeah.
And one way or the other, this is going to work out. And it did.
Yeah.
I think my biggest lesson was embracing that journey, because there are nights where I was like, why am I even still working? Because I did not know if I'll have a job tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I also had a few people that were in my corner and they checked in on me. I think Megan did a great job as my manager of like, hey, we'll figure it out.
Right.
I mean, I think that's one thing that helps us go through some of the hardest times of our lives is
having those people.
Like I had a great support system.
Yes.
My parents were praying for me, were supporting me, and we would check in all the time. My brothers were supporting me. And then my employer, my manager was also supportive. And then friends like you who would like check in and like, what's going on?
Right.
When should we expect the news? When are you expecting the news? And keep hoping and encouraging me. But those people got me through some of my hardest moments.
Yeah. And I just want to double down by saying this, that, when all things in life are variables, rely on the constant.
That's true.
Everything else, there's going to always be something that was that storm. But in every situation where you're surrounded by variables, rely on the constant.
Yeah.
What would be a call to action for our listeners as we close out? What would be a call to action for them? And then the other question is, how do they follow you? How can they connect with you?
Okay. I think the call to action is, regardless of where you are. I mean, I came from a very small country. Regardless of where you are, however small or whatever job you have, whatever you're doing, think big. Think beyond where you are. There's just no limit to what you can do with a big vision. And I think, when things get tough, just double down. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't quit.
Right.
And you always make it if you don't quit, one way or the other. And so people can connect with me on LinkedIn and Facebook, or find me at 3N in downtown in Tulsa. But I would love to connect with anyone that wants to.
What's your handle on those socials?
Timothy Mwesigwa.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you, Aaron, for having me.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. This has been wonderful. You all heard it from his mouth. Think big. Think big. Whatever you're going through, think big. I love it. Thanks so much for tuning in today. You can follow us on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Please take some time to go to our website. Also, you can follow newutulsa.com. Go to our website and follow what's going on with New You. It's my pleasure serving as your host. Thanks a lot. Look forward to hearing from you later.
Thank you for listening to this episode of New Voices. Visit our website at www.newutulsa.com. That is NEWUTulsa.com. Follow us on social media at New You Tulsa on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And a special thank you to our producer, Jesse Ulrich. If you're looking for self-improvement, join our free cohorts for personal and professional development opportunities. New You is a way for diverse talent to imagine, discover, and actualize a 2.0 version of yourself. Bring your future into focus.